Thank you.
I'll now call to order the work session of July 18th at 7:21 PM. Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator. Here. Trustee Daly. Trustee Mason. Here. Trustee Teets.
Here.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Here.
Mayor Shosse. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, the first item on the agenda, I'll come stand up just for fun. Dan Sapienza, Town Attorney. The first item on the agenda tonight is part of something we had brought and discussed with the board a couple months ago. It's kind of an effort that the town staff would really like to undertake, and that's code cleanup. The Wellington Municipal Code has been adopted over a long period of time with a lot of bits and pieces brought from different places. Parts of it are kind of a hodgepodge, I'll say. I think it's one of the duties of the town, and certainly one of the things that I would appreciate if the town board would do is take a look at this code. We can revise parts of it, clean up parts of it, get rid of obsolete parts of it. And the section that I've put in here is Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is the general offenses of the town of Wellington. I started working on this project. Actually, I looked at my notes and it was back in 2019. So some of the changes you see on this are from 2019. That's how long it's kind of languished. And one of the reasons for that is it is a big section. It is an important section. And I wanted to get a lot of input. So as I started looking at this and started making changes, Brad March and I in my office have discussed this at length. I've had my law clerk go over it a million times. Thanks, Ben. And there's a lot to it. This section's, it's pretty long. I've met with Larimer County Sheriff's Office on this a couple of times because I really want their input. And I've had a couple of conversations with various people in our municipal court. The original plan of looking at Chapter 10 was decriminalization. I know Trustee Wiegand's looking at me with big bright eyes. Oh, he's even put his glasses in his mouth. He's intrigued. I really got his attention with that, didn't I? So in the town of Wellington, we have a criminal code, we have criminal offenses, and we have municipal, it's called municipal offenses. A potential penalty for a criminal offense in the town of Wellington that goes through our municipal court is jail time. I'll tell you, I can't tell you the last time that our municipal court judge sentenced somebody to jail time. There's a lot of reasons for that. One is our municipal court, if you've never attended it, is right here. Our municipal judge sits where the mayor sits. It's a relatively informal, smaller court. The other, but probably the bigger factor is Larimer County Sheriff's Office. When they write citations and summons into our municipal court, they have a lot of discretion. And there are huge parts of the municipal code that are lesser offenses than what would normally go to county or district court. So when a sheriff's officer contacts somebody and say it's a theft charge, they could write a number of different levels of charges, and really the lowest level charge that they might write would be a municipal theft charge. If it's something more serious, they'll write a misdemeanor. They could write a felony theft charge, and the town would never see any of that. The town court, the municipal court would never see any of that. So really the offenses that come into municipal court are already sort of lower level criminal offenses. And it's nice for the sheriff's office to still have that. So I'm not asking that theft not be a violation of the town code, because there's definitely times where theft might occur and those sheriff's deputies look at that charge and say, this is something that should be handled locally. And that's really what the municipal court's all about, is local handling municipal problems at the local level. We can have sentences for community, what is the word I'm looking for? Volunteers, community service. Thank you, Trustee. Community service can be handled right here in the town of Wellington. We have classes that often the municipal court will sentence people to. There are fines. There's a lot involved with it. A lot of options. Jail doesn't necessarily need to be one of those. If it's jail is probably a correct sentence, likely that person didn't receive a municipal summons. They were already going to county court, district court, our district attorney will see them and will be able to handle those offenses. So it's not asking that theft not be a crime. It's saying when that theft is written into municipal court, removing jail time as a possible sentence. Why would we do that? Other than we don't use it. One of the big reasons is money, quite honestly. As soon as jail time becomes a potential sentence, the defendant is actually eligible for public defender potential, possibly, depending on their income. And the town of Wellington would pay for that. If jail is taken off the table, that line item in our municipal code or in our municipal budget could be eliminated. So even having it as a potential violation or a potential sentence, excuse me, creates a problem for us. Because it's not been used, I think it's something that's worth discussing. Now, I'm not actually asking you today to discuss that, because I don't want to spring on you chapter 10, and I put it in the packet so you could see what we're dealing with. This is intended to be a long-term project, but decriminalization was the first thing. That's what I really went into this looking at. And there's a number of parts of our code that mention jail time. You can go to jail for violating our traffic code. You can go to jail for a number of criminal offenses. You can go to jail for a number of offenses related to the possession of animals. There's a lot of different places in our code where jail is mentioned, and I'd like to revise our code to eliminate all of those. But as I started looking at chapter 10, there's a lot more. Chapter 10 being the criminal code of the town of Wellington has bits of it that were taken out of state statute. Copied a big chunk of state statute and dropped it in the town code. And then for a different offense, they grabbed a code section from a town over here and dropped it into the town code. And then for another offense, they might have written it themselves. And I say they, some attorney over the last, say, 50, 60 years. Some attorney over the last 30 years who I nudge periodically to say, you should have done a different job, but we won't talk about that. What that's led to is a lot of inconsistency, and I like consistency. So a number of the changes that you see in that long list of chapter 10 are, you're gonna say, what difference does this make? It's really just about standardizing the language. If we're gonna go through the effort of taking a look at all of this, let's fix it all. Let's create a general offenses code that is standardized, uniform, easy to understand for the people that need to understand it. And then we also need to clean it up. There are code sections that I can't tell you the last time they were used, if ever. The one that I always love seeing is we have a whole section about criminalizing use of slugs. This is a state statute. Have you ever prosecuted a slugs violation?
In Jefferson County many years ago, that was something we put people down to sort of false means for a plea.
Right. Use of slugs is where you take a vending machine and you insert something into a vending machine that's not a quarter. That's a slug.
I thought it was like literally a slug out of a gun. I was like, that's such a strange thing.
Nope, use of slugs. It's about vending machines
I-
primarily.
Different.
We haven't prosecuted. I don't, we might have once upon a time used it in the same way. You know what? I think if sheriff's officers want to arrest somebody for use of slugs, we can send them to, let's send them up to the district attorney instead of dealing with them locally. But, so, and there's another piece of, a number of other items like that. I think this is an opportunity to look at the general offenses of the town, to look at what is illegal in the town, what does the town want to enforce? So I sort of want to put all of those things on the table. With the red line that's in front of you, a lot of it's just about, it's not substantive changes. A lot of it's about just making things more standardized. There's pieces of it I have removed. And I'm probably gonna have some more conversation with the sheriff's office. There are items that I initially thought, let's get that out of there, and through some deeper conversations, they said, yeah, actually, we'd like to keep that one there. And knowing that that's a violation of your municipal code might allow us to write it down into municipal court. Again, keep that local. So the purpose of putting this in front of you today was just to introduce the subject to you. Our idea for code cleanup, something we want to do on a regular basis, and we're thinking about doing this quarterly. The idea is the first time I see you, it's going to be something like this. Just giving you a very quick overview, not asking you to really have a conversation. You can ask me questions if you want, but presenting to you the section that we're going to look at. Then in the second meeting of the quarter, ideally, the second one would be the work session on the second month of the quarter is what we're ideally aiming for. We will come to you and say, all right, now you've last month you got the code. This month, here are some suggestions we have, some real items of conversation to facilitate a conversation among the board at the work session. And then in the third month of the quarter is when we'd actually bring back to you, okay, now here's the real proposal. Here's the ordinance. That being said, well, first of all, are there any questions quickly about chapter 10 and
What theft would not, oh, I'm
by
sorry.
please?
What theft would not qualify for jail time? If it was just left for the county or the state? Just curious. I mean, I had my catalytic converter stolen. It cost me almost $2,000. I definitely would like to see that guy go to jail or gal or whoever it was.
That one's not coming to municipal court.
Okay,
I mean, realistically, if the sheriff's office were to issue a summons for, were to find somebody and charge them with that, it's not being written into municipal court.
can he kind of answer what might come into a municipal court?
I can tell you what, the last theft charge, I can tell you the two last
Yeah,
actual theft charges that we had for adults. We're not going to count minors. One was a shoplifting of a $10 bottle of whiskey. That came to municipal court. The second one we had was theft of water. And that was somebody using a municipal fire hydrant to fill up a dump truck for construction purposes without using a meter. So in those two cases, we had $10. Let's be honest, we can
mhm.
handle that locally. And jail probably isn't a correct,
So
sentence for
minor
$10.
shoplifting would be what you're looking
really
at.
minor. And
Right.
the other one was water. And the reason that was written into municipal court was it is of particular interest to the town of Wellington.
Mhm.
And so we wanted to handle that one here as well.
Right.
So either of those, I want to, but mostly we're going to see the $10
Right.
shoplifting, something like that. And again, if it's being written into court here, it's likely being written into court here, knowing that jail is not going to be an option already. And so I'd like to just remove that from our books.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I'd hate to handcuff our police by not having that as being a deterrent on the bigger stuff. I know you get into some of the bigger towns, the theft, anything under $1,000 is no bail, pretty much out. And
nothing's really being taken off the table for the
Okay.
police here. If it is serious enough where jail, at the discretion of the officers, it's not coming to us anyway. By removing it as a potential penalty in municipal court, I don't know if it's gonna have any effect really on what's coming to municipal court, because right now, I can't tell you the last time somebody was sentenced to jail time by our municipal court. So it's already sort of treated this way, but by having it as an option, by having it as a potential sentence,
that's where we have.
if
to-
that $10 shoplifter comes to municipal court, even if we're not seeking jail time, if he comes to municipal court and if he's indigent and is eligible for a public defender, and he says, not guilty, I want a trial, then the town's gonna have, because jail time is a potential sentence, the town then will have to fund the public defender to have that trial. If if jail time is taken off the table, if we make the changes we're talking about to decriminalize our municipal code, that $10 shoplifter comes to court and he says, not guilty, I want a trial. We say, fantastic, we'll have a trial to the court. We don't have a jury, which has cost. We don't have to appoint a public defender because jail is off the table. So it really, the actual effect is there in terms of enforcement from the sheriff's office perspective is there is no change.
Mhm.
This actually just probably clarifies for them that if they write it in a municipal court, it's definitely not gonna end up in jail. It is,
I did have thoughts on this, but my gathering is this is the point of the next work session is this.
It's really the point of the next.
Okay.
I mean, if you have, and this is,
Okay.
right now is
'Cause,
really big picture conversation. Next one's more specific
Okay,
conversation
'cause
and then.
there are some other nuances, but I'll save those to the next one because I do want to get into that because I think there are some other things that we need to look at on
Yeah.
that point. So it's good points, but
And-
I'll wait till the next meeting and maybe I'll even talk to you beforehand. So. we can
And I'd
talk
be
about
happy
it.
to, and that's one of the reasons we want to do this as kind of a long-term process is right now you can get this kind of big picture overview to be thinking about some of these things. The next time when we come to you with for some real conversation, you've been able to mull it over for a month or so. And I'd be happy to have offline conversations. Absolutely. I think that'd be great if you had those events.
I do have one thing, because I know this could possibly take a bit, so I want to give you enough time to prepare for this. Section 10-9-20, I would really truly, and this
Hold on 1
is
second. Let me
Yeah.
get to 10-9-20 real quick.
page
Or-
39. So, and I know this is something that I have stressed in our mayor's meetings to Ms. Garcia. Something that I have talked about, but I would really truly like to look at constitutional carry here in town for our residents. And I would hate to adjust this to continue to add carrying a concealed weapon. It is unlawful for any person to knowingly and unlawfully carry a knife concealed, carry a firearm concealed on or about his person. I would definitely like to consider the constitutional carry when we're looking at this section of the ordinance. So I know that could possibly take
Or you said.
a little bit
by
longer.
Define constitution. I'm curious. Define what you mean by the town allowing.
So no
constitution-
permit for concealed weapons.
No
Constitutional carry means that we recognize someone's constitutional rights to bear arms.
I think that would end up being a violation of county or state law. And so I don't know that's something the town could do, but I appreciate you bringing it up. I'm happy to look into it. So that's great.
Got it. Thank you.
And yeah, it's that sort of big picture. Now, so this is a long-term project and the reason chapter 10 has taken so long since 2019 for me to bring to you is a big one. And I think it's going to facilitate a lot of really big conversation. And it's gonna be a lot of work on my end and I think a lot of work on the town board's end. My concern is timing. And that's been the concern since 2019, which is why this has taken as long as it has. The plan is to do each one of these code sections once a quarter. And so if I were to do this code section in quarter 3, which sounded like a great idea, like, I don't know, like a month ago or a couple months ago. If I were to do a code section, that means I'm coming to you for a work session on August 15th to have a big old conversation about the offenses of the town of Wellington. And then I'm going to be to work. So I'm going to be doing a lot of work between now and then. Get that ready. And then August 15th, I'm going to take all your information. I'm going to put a lot of time into drafting ordinances to come back, say mid-September. We've got a new finance director that was just appointed. We've got the budget process that is just kicking off with a brand new finance director. Now I am not personally involved in setting the budget or really budget processes. I like to keep anything numbers related away from me as much as possible. But certainly in bringing the finance director up to speed, I know I'm going to be involved in a lot of meetings with him and not just finance. I think there's a lot of other really important issues coming before this board. On August 22nd, we have a hearing that was scheduled last week for annexation of Sage Farms. On August 23rd, we will have the hearing of an appeal. We've got a lot of very big items that are coming up in August and coming into September. And I personally have concerns with prioritizing this that I've been managed to not prioritize for 4 years. Yet it always seems like the wrong time. So I guess what I'm wanting to know, and this is probably the bigger conversation I'd like you, the feedback. While I said a couple months ago that I'm coming in on quarter 3 to bring this to you, is this the priority that you want me working on right now? And personally, I think it's probably not, but I want your feedback. If it's not your priority in quarter 3, I'm still happy to have put this in front of you. I feel like I've been avoiding not prioritizing even getting this far for so long that I like having this in front of you and having a bit of a conversation so that if I came back in quarter 4 to have to move forward more, I feel like you're gonna be a little more prepared for that. I want to know, we said we were gonna do this once a quarter, beginning in quarter 3. is now the right time to be prioritizing this project.
Well, I have a quick question for the board that might kind of help direct that request for direction. When we're looking at the criminal code aspect, as you mentioned in the beginning, are we looking for heavy-handed jail time, big fines, or are we looking at a lighter, softer approach, more engaged with community service and just meeting state statute requirements?
And I agree, that's a conversation we need to have. The only concern I have is to give that direction, one, I think that's the point of the next stage, and two, we're also missing 2 members of our board. So I'm happy to go into that conversation if you want to right now.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is that just to kind of give him like a springboard, I think that our missing board members will be able to provide some additional feedback. There will be lots of time to do that, but because like when we're looking at adjusting fees and fines, that could, if we do that at the wrong time, that could negatively impact the staff's ability to provide accurate budget numbers. So I personally would prefer to wait and see that information not be prioritized and prioritize the budget and the financial development.
I guess on my standpoint, I've been along with Dan for 3 of the 4 years of working on this.
I think you and I first met on this in 2020, so.
Yeah.
I know we've been. talking about this
So I
for-
would like to see this addressed because there are some things, and one specific one that Dan and I discussed was animal at large. And we actually had someone that had to come to court and pay a fine because they walked their dog from their porch to their car without a leash. I kid you not. The dog walked from their porch to the car, not on a leash, on their own property, sat on the lawn.
I will say there was a lot more to it. just
There's
as
more
big-
to that, but that's
But
some
you're
examples.
correct. That was the actual violation.
That was the violation. They literally did not have their dog on a leash while it went from their house to their car. And that is actually a offense in our code right now in chapter 10. Like literally, the town has to go and pursue that. So I think that there are things that need to be cleaned up. Within that, I have some differences of opinion on different things. So I think that I want to be careful because as Trustee Wiegand had pointed out, not that is happening here, but it is happening in other places where either states or counties are beginning to lower the bar on what is a criminal offense. And I think that if we change things at the municipal level now to say, hey, we're not gonna do anything with this, and then it gets changed later on, and we decide, hey, we actually should have this because it's not being dealt with at a higher level. Like right now, LCSO can write it into district court. That could change in the future. And if we say, hey, we still think jail should be a penalty, then we have to switch it back. And I think there's wisdom in keeping, there's a budgeted portion so that if that happens down the future, we're not scrambling to try and figure out how do we come up to the money to do this. But again, I think that really is part of the longer conversation of going through this, but that's kind of my thought. So I think this should be addressed. I think it's not, Dan's not really a huge part of the budget. It's going to put more on our plates because we're going to have appeal, we're going to have this, and we're going to have, now the nice thing is we can work on this over the next 2 weeks. We don't have anything for the appeal. We don't have any information for budget. So that really gives us probably another 2 weeks that we can focus on really kind of doing our deep dive into this so that when we do get the stuff for the appeal, when we start getting budget information, we can already have taken care of this portion. So my preference would be to just get this addressed and worked into our schedule.
I have 2 things. One, the only issue I had was the conversation about not entitled to a trial by jury. So that one right there already bothers me. So just because everyone is entitled to certain things under their rights. The other thing is I absolutely have to say, I agree that I think maybe Q4, this might fit more appropriately. It was under my understanding that we could possibly get the packet back for the appeal earlier. I know, I just keeping my fingers crossed,
Working on-
but I feel in all fairness, it is something that probably needs our attention more right now than what this does. I'm not saying that I want to put this off. I'm just saying that I think Q4 might be a better option or alternative for us. I know that puts it around Christmas time, but we typically have a lighter schedule towards Q4. So yes, so that would be my hope. I understand, and I do want to get this addressed, even if that means that we have to be like, okay, we're going to double down and accomplish 2 instead of 1 next quarter in 2024. Like something along those lines. I agree that it needs addressed, but I think really truly we have a lot on our plate coming up in general that needs our undivided attention. That's just my 2 cents. I'll go either way, but I would like to see it in Q4 if that is possible.
Trustee Regan, any thoughts?
If we can do it this quarter, good, but if we need to push it on down, I think either one would work. I like what you're doing here. I think it does need to be cleaned up. I don't think we want to handcuff our sheriffs, our deputies here. And that's just the main concern that I would have. I want to make sure that they're protected and they have the rights to do their job, so.
And so, I've had meetings with, been working on this long enough. I've had lengthy meetings with Sergeant Reardon, who preceded Sergeant Cherry. Then I met with Sergeant Cherry on this, and I've gone down and to the Sheriff's Department in Fort Collins to talk with a number of folks. So definitely trying to make sure we get their input on this.
Trustee Mason?
I'm probably the outlier in the room where to say that if we had to be here till 10:30 every time we had one of the meetings, I'm not opposed. I would absolutely do that because I just love this stuff. But certainly we understand what the priorities are. Certainly the budget, getting the audits done, getting the finance guys up to speed are clearly going to be the priorities over the next couple months, obviously, along with the not to be spoken of meeting. But yeah, no, I mean, I certainly concur with the rest of the board. If we need to push these types of things out just to make sure that we've got all the priorities done, I think that makes a lot of sense. But again, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to burning the midnight oil on just about anything. So that's just me though. So.
Well, thank you so much, Trustee Mason. Well, we've heard it, a couple, the spectrum, a sense of urgency. We want to get this wrapped up. We all have priorities and goals that we want to have accomplished as board members. So I appreciate Trustee Gator's drive to want to get this wrapped up. But I am very concerned about having full board member participation in this conversation, as Trustee Gator had also alluded to. I do have a lot of concern that Mayor Chelsea isn't here and able to help conduct these conversations. So I appreciate an opportunity to pump the brakes and slow the conversation down just a little bit. So maybe we, until Mayor Chelsea comes back, we can hope to see this at the October work session at the latest, on or before. Maybe that kind of that's like maybe a medium middle ground. That's Q4, but the beginning of Q4, budget's being presented. So we should be past some of these hurdles, maybe.
What I'll say is, I will strive to get this on the get this in front of you so that we can have it completed certainly by the end of the year. And I think completed,
Okay.
And I think there's either September, October to have that next conversation.
An update in October?
We'll speed it up as much as we can, but I do think, I don't think coming back in August with the next step is perhaps right at this time. So yeah.
Okay, so
we'll
Plan
speed
for an
this up.
update in October then.
Just a couple of quick things just for us to keep in mind. We got this in the finance committee last night, so this is the draft budget calendar. But we're slated to be presenting the budget in a work session for our October work session. That's planned for the budget to come to the board, which is typically a longer conversation. We also have beginning of October, we're doing a separate special work session to go through some of the items. So just, it's hard either way. We're at the beginning of budget if we do it now. We're in the middle to end of budget if we do it later. So it's just something to keep in mind. We're going to run into budget whichever direction we go.
Understandable. Thank you
Okay.
so much, Trustee
Yep.
Gator, for, keeping us on track with the schedule. Any other direction or?
One item I didn't mention in talking about the substance here, I'll just mention briefly something that I definitely want to make sure we get done, and I might see if we can bring this one piece of this forward prior to maybe in October, is collections. Currently, the municipal court does not have collections. We need to have legal authority to do that, and so there will be an addition of a section basically saying that if somebody didn't pay, the town court can, or municipal court can engage a collection service and they can go after them and pursue the money. So that's just another piece of this.
Excellent. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next up on the agenda, we have the 8th Judicial District Attorney presentation by Mr. Gordon McLaughlin.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem and trustees. I've already been told that, following an accountant and another attorney, the third guy in a suit is gonna bore everyone tonight, so I apologize in advance. But maybe not to trustee Mason who wants to be here till midnight. But I won't keep you all here that long. If anything, it was actually a great segue from, Town Attorney Sapienza, about some of the differences between the municipal court and what we do at the district attorney's office, which is county court and district court. And that's why I'm here tonight, to let you all know what we do at the DA's office, what we're working on, hear from you how we can improve, and really we want to serve the Wellington community. Larimer County is, do you happen to have a clicker for that?
If you just come in advance.
Bad, like yelling at you. Next slide.
My pleasure.
But next slide, please. So here we go. So we're the 8th Judicial District. Most people don't even know what that means. And I say this where I know a lot of the folks here with the nameplates probably do, but I know there's always a lot of community members at these meetings and watching online, which I very much appreciate. And so, whether it's a leader with a title or just the leaders that participate in these meetings, I want them to know who we are and be accountable to all you. So we're the 8th Judicial District. We're Larimer and Jackson County. Most folks know Jackson on the way to Steamboats as a gas station stop, but it's one of my 2 counties. We're very proud of that county as well. But it's a huge county, right? Larimer County is bigger than the state of Rhode Island. And so I'm trying to get around to all the town boards, all the town councils. Y'all are one of my last. In fact, Fort Collins, which is across the street from my building, is the only place I haven't been yet. Probably because they also don't want to be there till midnight. And so this is the second to last place. So I'm glad to be here and be able to speak to y'all. But so we're a big county. We have a lot of towns and we're trying to make sure we're doing right by all of them. As some of this conversation was, right? Everyone has different expectations. Every town is dealing with different issues. The catalytic converter thing, right, is a perfect example. That's a hot button issue for sure. I think I actually might have a slide later on talking about auto theft, but since you already brought it up, Larimer County is actually one of the lowest, maybe the lowest rate of auto theft on the Front Range, dramatically so when compared to like Adams County, Denver, and where, the news on, TV is showing us every night that there are huge auto theft rates. That being said, it's a big deal when someone's catalytic converter is stolen. It's a big deal when someone's car is stolen. I actually worked on a bill this year that made all auto theft a felony regardless of value. And the reason we did that is 1, because this is a serious offense, but 2, because treating these crimes differently, saying that someone's car is worth $1,000, that's a misdemeanor. But if someone's worth 10,000, that's a felony. It really makes sense, right? If anything, the person who has the more expensive car is more likely to have a significant other they can borrow a car from, insurance, they get some a rental, they can pay for an Uber, they can do something. The person with $1,000 car might not be able to get to work. They might not be able to pay the bills. They may not be able to get their kids to school. So that's a big deal. So auto theft is something higher on our radar. Catalytic converter theft is sort of right in that same wheelhouse. It can be debilitating to people. Those are all going to be written to the DA's office. So that's a perfect example of how that breaks down. That's going to be a felony. That's always going to come to our office. It's not going to be handled by any of the municipal courts, and we're taking those seriously. Next slide, please. This is our mission and vision. I'll just read the vision quickly: to protect and serve Larimer and Jackson counties while creating a stronger community where the application of criminal justice is more equitable and no longer at odds with social justice. So what that means essentially is my first and foremost goal is to keep my community safe. That is what we do at the DA's office. But how we do that can be done in a lot of different ways, and things like having conversations about, hey, like Mr. Sapienza talked about, when is jail the most effective, right? Are we going to have better bang for our buck? Are we going to have a better chance of reducing recidivism, meaning making sure those people don't come back again, by putting someone in jail or by giving them access to resources? Often that's something like mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment, and really making sure that we're giving people the resources so that they stop committing those crimes and we address the underlying issues that brought them into our office in the first place. And so that's one of the things we're focused on. This is a roadmap of what we do. Again, you'd be here past midnight if I tried to go through all these things, but I put this up here only to show that there is a lot going on at the DA's office. And that's one of the things I want to come out and talk to people about, because people do have good relationships with their local law enforcement. Here, it's obviously the sheriff's office. A lot of the places I go, it's the town police department and the police chief that comes and reports. And that is, of course, an incredibly important part of the criminal justice process. Then there's a whole nother back end that happens often behind closed doors down in Fort Collins at the Justice Center, and people don't know what happens. And so we want to make sure that people do understand what we do. And it's a long, long process, often a frustrating process, right? When defendants come into our doors, when victims come into our doors, that's often the worst time in their lives, right? It is not fun to have to see me in my professional life. And so it's a very labor intensive, time intensive process. We have a large staff. We have 42 attorneys. We're the largest law firm in Northern Colorado. And we are working on these cases every single day from the moment law enforcement brings us those charges to sometimes 12, 18, 24 months later when it goes to trial, to then maybe years after that when it's still in the appeals process and we're fighting for accountability and the integrity of those convictions. This is sort of a snapshot of some of what we're doing. I'm gonna talk about our data in a little bit. But this is how many cases we are filing on a quarterly basis. Essentially, it means that we're filing somewhere in the range of 12,000 cases a year in our office between all levels of charges. There's a COVID line there, like as COVID did funky things to the criminal justice system, probably like it did to all of town governance. And so there's some bouncing up and down. That top line is misdemeanors, that yellow line is felonies, which sort of shows this data is about 7 years, a slow trajectory down in felonies in Larimer County over that course of 7 years.
Which is awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. These are some of the programs we're working on. Again, just to touch on some of these really quickly. We started an adult diversion program at the end of 2021. Getting my years strung together here now, but our first full year was 2022. As you can see there, we put 358 people through that in 2022, and we had a 91% success rate. Diversion is exactly what it sounds like. We're diverting people out of the criminal justice system. So we, instead of using a ton of resources from our office, a ton of judicial resources, ton of probation resources, we are getting them out of the criminal justice system with things that are going to hold them accountable. That might be something that just came up, community service, that might be paying restitution to a victim, that may be getting some sort of treatment. And we're making sure that they're trying to learn from that mistake, but that we're not expending a ton of resources and potentially setting that person back in their road to recovery. So that program has been very successful. We started a complex case prosecutor. That person's focused on a few things. This was in 2022. One of the big things they're focused on is prosecuting fentanyl distribution causing death. Fentanyl has ravaged Larimer County. It's ravaged Colorado. It's ravaged the US. It is everywhere. We are not unique in terms of the fact that it's impacting us, and that's good and bad, right? We're not doing any worse, but the status quo for the nation is terrible. And so we're working very hard on those. Only a couple handfuls of these cases have been filed statewide. On 3 of them we filed in Larimer County, one including a juvenile that was killed in Loveland last year because of fentanyl. And so we're trying to hold those dealers accountable at a homicide type level because they killed someone in our community, and it's often vulnerable people in our community. Now, my philosophy when we're talking about drug use is that drug users, we need to direct them to treatment. That is how they're going to overcome that obstacle. That's how they're going to stop committing crimes, is getting them to treatment. And that's often more of a public health issue. But when we're talking about, and I know Trustee Mason's on the opioid, God, I always get the acronyms confused, but abatement council for Larimer County. And we're trying to make good use of those funds for things like treatment, prevention, and education, because the way to combat a lot of that is not necessarily through the criminal justice system. But when we're talking about dealer level folks, and folks that are actually distributing those drugs that are killing people in our communities, those folks we're going to try to hold accountable, and we've been successful at that so far. Transparency, that's why I'm here. The DA's office really needs to be more transparent. We published our first ever annual report just a couple months ago for 2022. We are the only county department that had not published an annual report. And so now that's on our website. Anyone can access that, see what we've been up to. Our goal is to hopefully expand that every year. That's why I'm out here. That's why I'm trying to go to community events, because we need to be accountable like everybody else. Economic Crime Task Force, we have a prosecutor that's working on white collar crimes. We've gotten some big restitution verdicts, back to taxpayers, back to local residents. One of them, I'm reminded of because we're here in a library, the Pruder Valley Library, had something, like $100,000 stolen by an employee over the course of a couple of years. We got that $100,000 back to the Pruder Library System, and y'all know, I mean, that is, some of the great work being done for our community and for our kids. And so we're proud of some of those results. We reworked what's called our CERT protocol, or Critical Incident Response Team. That's what responds to officer-involved shootings and officer uses of force. We did a huge rewrite of that with the collaboration of all the law enforcement agencies in Larimer County, so that we could make sure that we're investigating those really thoroughly, really unbiasedly, and that whatever the result may be, whether that may be charging an officer, whether that may be saying that action was justified, that we can stand behind that to the community and be proud of that result and explain to the community why that decision was made. And so all of our law enforcement partners, including obviously those that patrol here, the Sheriff's Department, were crucial partners in that. And we're very supportive of the product that we have, which I think, in my unbiased opinion, is the leading protocol in the state of Colorado in terms of making sure that these are thorough and transparent to the community. And then lastly, victim services. To highlight that, a lot of folks don't know we do that. They think we're prosecutors. All we do is prosecute. We're just attorneys. You know, we pound our fist on the lectern in the courtroom, and that's what we do. And we do some of that, admittedly, but we have a robust victim services department. We have 7 victim advocates that are working with victims of domestic violence, of sexual assault, of other crimes every single day. These things happen more frequently than we think. Not every time that there's a sexual assault is the Coloradan covering that. Domestic violence, in just like fentanyl, it is everywhere across America. We are no exception in Larimer County. So we have advocates working really hard on those things. They're talking with victims. They're walking them through the process, which is complicated. They're dealing with trauma from those victims. They're connecting them to resources around the community. And so they're a great group. One thing to highlight in 2022 is we got a courtroom facility dog. I should have brought him. He doesn't wear a suit, though he has a nice official vest. But what he does is he is one more part of that team to help victims in their most traumatic times come in. You know, when we dealing with a child victim, perhaps of a sexual assault, and, you know, we're saying you might have to testify at trial. That is trauma that I cannot describe. I wish I could take that away. I wish I never had to say that to a victim. I wish we never had to take these cases to trial and people just came in and said, hold me accountable. But that's not how it goes. And so we have to do that. A lot of cases that don't actually go to trial, we have also prepared for trial. And so we're working and preparing hundreds of cases a year that then get resolved in a fair resolution, but haven't gone to trial. But we have prepped those victims. We've had those conversations and we've been ready to do that. And so that's very hard. That dog, he's been trained for 2 years and was by a nonprofit that then gave him to our office. And again, he's sort of a grounding force when we're having these meetings with victims, and can actually be in the witness stand, under the witness stand when a witness is testifying if the judge so allows. So that's a great benefit. And then the last thing to highlight here is our data transparency project. So talking about transparency, we launched at the September of 2022, what is among the largest data transparency projects of any prosecutor's office in the country. So this is all on our website, and the link is up there in the slide. And we're using this to make data-driven decisions, because that is what's expected of a prosecutor's office now in 2023. That's not what prosecutors have historically done, but it is what we need to be doing now. So we're using this data in our decisions. We're also publishing it to the community so that folks understand what we do and why we do it. So I picked just a few things to show y'all. Some of these are from what we call sort of our background dashboard, where we can filter from the different agencies. Obviously here, I wrote whole county below that LCSO because this is not Wellington specific. We can't filter for that. But I've been trying to show all the boards their local agency. So this is that same case filed graph, but this is for Larimer County Sheriff's Office and what they're filing with us. You can see those numbers. have sort of been pretty steady. There's obviously some COVID differences there, but that's sort of the percentage breakdown. This is the, I just got some flare, the percent of cases filed by type. And so the top one is our whole district. And then that lower one is, the sheriff's office. You can see, traffic is a pretty big part of that. It's a little bit smaller part of the sheriff's office, which makes sense just because we're talking about more rural county roads and less, sort of inner city traffic issues that maybe Fort Collins or Loveland deal with that bump up that traffic stat. But that top one, again, for the 8th Judicial District, that's something that's available on our website. So when people want to say, what's that type of crime going on? I'm sort of similar to the conversation y'all had about, hey, what are the municipal crimes being charged in Wellington? Well, folks in Larimer County now want to know what type of crime is going on in Larimer County. They can see that on our website. This is another way to look at the type of crime. These are both on our public website. On the left there, that 2017 dot is highlighted because this is the breakdown from 2017, and on the right, 2022, because that's the last full year of data. You can see there a lot of those are pretty similar. What jumps out at me when I look at those two is that traffic is actually down. I think that's a lot of law enforcement agencies have sort of reoriented some of their focus, and their focus less on some of the specific traffic violations and more on some of the other types of crime. So that's sort of the biggest bar change there in those types of crimes. Violent crimes, that's of course something people are always interested in. This is the 8th Judicial District as a whole. Again, what it shows there is essentially violent crime has been pretty flat for about 7 years. That's in a time where our county has grown pretty significantly. So per capita, that rate is down. We're of course always trying to keep that as low as possible, but that is a pretty low, steady rate over the course of quite a long period. Motor vehicle thefts, I told you I'd get to that. This is not something from our data dashboard, but this is, again, I get asked about it all the time. So I try to inform people about it. What you can see there is per 100,000 residents, our rate of car theft is 16.5. This came from the Common Sense Institute, which is a research group out of Denver. And, if you look at something like Adams County, it's 216. So we are lower by quite a few factors here when we're talking about auto theft. That's not to minimize the issue. As I said, when it happens to someone, it is a big deal. But we are not at the mercy of some of these crazy numbers like some of those more metro counties are. And that is it. So this is some of our contact information for the public watching as well. We are at the Justice Center down on Mason and LaPorte. Folks can come in, they can talk to us, our investigators, our advocates. We want to be accessible to people, but there's a lot of information on our website. It is growing every day, the amount we're putting up there. We're also on Facebook and Twitter, trying to tell the community what we're up to, whether that's a sentencing on a significant case or an expansion of our diversion program or something else. There can be a lot of information found out there as well. So with that, I thank y'all for your time, but I'm happy to take questions from anyone about what we're doing or feedback or whatever you have for me.
I had the pleasure of touring the Community Judicial Alternative.
Community Justice Alternative.
Justice Alternative. Now, do you assign them to there or how do they end up going to there?
That's a great question. So Community Justice Alternatives is the county department that runs community corrections, which a lot of people know as the halfway house, as well as some other programs like work release and work enders. So often, technically a judge is going to sentence someone. So a judge is going to say you have to go to work release for 30 days. But most cases are resolved with a plea. And that is across the country. 98% give or take of cases are resolved with a negotiated resolution, a plea, not a trial. And so when we're making offers to defense counsel or to the public defender's office, those are things that we would offer. So we might look at a case and say, this person should be having some sort of sanction, right? This is a serious crime. We need to make sure they are being held accountable. We need to make sure we're doing right by a victim potentially. And so this isn't something where they should get diversion or just probation. They should be serving some sort of time in jail, but we also don't want them losing their job because that's not going to be good for anyone. That's going to set them back. That's going to set their family back, their kids back. They might lose their house, their job. So we might choose something like work release, where they can serve a sentence at community justice alternatives, but also get out during the day, work their job, and hopefully keep on the right track. So that's a type of situation where we may use community justice alternatives. The community corrections, which is sort of across the street from that building, same complex there. Community corrections is often what we think of as a pre-Department of Corrections sentence. So Department of Corrections being prison. If someone is perhaps not quite at the level that straight prison is appropriate, we'll give them the opportunity at community corrections. Again, that allows them to have a job, but be very heavily supervised during their day to get treatment, to have those things with a big potential consequence hanging over their head. Because if they do not succeed at the community corrections, they will go to prison. That's what community corrections means.
Thank you.
Trustee Teets.
Would you say that the diversion program is, I noticed it was at 91%. Do you guys include this community facilities as part of that diversion, or is it a totally different statistic and outcome?
Totally different statistic.
Got it.
Yep. So when we say diversion at my office, we mean no actual sentence from a judge. So they're coming in our door, we're identifying that this is a low-level case, often a first-time offender, often a young adult, where we're saying this person needs something really finite and specific. They need to accomplish that, and they need to never come back here. If they don't accomplish it, we can then refile that case. We can still prosecute that case. But our goal is that they're not seeing a judge, they're not receiving a sentence.
Trustee Gator.
That was my only question, is what defines success? So you just explained it. Thank you.
And success is tricky to expand since you're interested. We want to expand our diversion program because it's a great use of taxpayer dollars, because it's very low use. It then lets us prioritize the more significant, serious cases with our attorney time. And it's going to get people on that right track quicker. The example we say is if folks have kids and the kid steals a cookie and you say, okay, you got to serve 20 minutes of timeout, and you can serve that 20 minutes of timeout 12 months from now, they're not going to learn a lesson. And that's the criminal justice system, unfortunately. One of the metrics on our data transparency website that all the districts that participated, we developed this with 7 other judicial districts in Colorado, was time to felony resolution. And the time to felony resolution of a case has grown since 2017, which is what all of our data goes back to. And then COVID happened and it grew steeper, but it had been growing since 2017, and no one realized the problem had gotten that bad. So we're trying to decrease those times. That's one of our big focuses with this data project. That being said, the cases just take a long time. And so if we can get someone the same or very similar treatment, consequences, resources through diversion, that may make an impact tomorrow, because our diversion staff may meet with someone in the building and say, okay, go sign up for this program tomorrow. And that may actually make a much bigger impact. So we're trying to expand that. Now, as we expand, right, we are taking more cases, and that success rate may not stay at 91% necessarily, but we're making a huge impact with those high success rates.
Mr. McLaughlin, thank you for coming down. Excellent presentation. Obviously, we've touched on diversion a lot tonight, and obviously that's something that's very close to me as far as the abatement council and that sort of thing. I was just kind of curious as far as when the behavioral health policy, the Larimer County Behavioral Health Center comes online. I would presume that's going to provide you guys with some additional resources to kind of continue down that diversion path. And
Yeah, I think so. Obviously we need to see how that shapes up. But that's an incredibly important resource to deal with that problem that, again, is going to be best solved through non-criminal justice resources. Criminal justice can address and mitigate some of those things, but we're never going to solve addiction in the courthouse. And so that facility is very important. And I think is going to give us some of those resources. We have some specialty programs, what we call problem-solving courts. So for instance, we have a drug court and a DUI court that are looking specifically at, really putting resources into helping folks that are in the worst situations that really need, they don't need a 8-hour alcohol class. They need months and months and months of court supervision. And so we're separating those people out. That facility is something that's going to help. I think I finished it. Is going to help with those that are really on that serious need of resources end. So it might be a different population than, for instance, we're seeing with that $10 candy bar theft that we're sending out of diversion. But it is another opportunity to solve those problems.
Well, I love the opportunities that the diversion programs provide, working in local government. I've seen it be successful several times working with youth. If you can quickly get them redirected, sometimes you can spark a passion in them that creates a change and puts them on a whole different life path. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for your presentation this evening. It was full of very good information and also A+ for entertainment value. So nice job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
A+,
For
geez, thank
For
you.
presentations, it was A+ for entertainment. So
Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate your time and appreciate what you do here.
okay. All right. We don't have any other items on the work session agenda. I adjourn this meeting at 8:16 p.m. Bye. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.